Hello, musicians. Are you ready to embark on a most noble adventure? We are going to explore Larghetto by Ferdinando Carulli. Ciao. Let me play through the piece first, and then we'll dive in. Carulli really is such a beautifully melodic and I just really love his pieces. They're real little gems for the repertoire. Okay, so Larghetto, this means slightly slow. Largo and adagio are often the slow indications in tempos, but Larghetto is just a little slow. It's not too slow. We are in the time signature of 2/4, and we have an anacrusis, and that's going to be very important, and we'll discuss how that applies to the whole piece. So 2/4, that means 2 beats to the bar, each one a quarter note. Remember that when we look at time signatures, the top number is the amount of beats, so 2 beats, and the bottom number is what kind of beat they are, so in this case a quarter note. We are also in the key of E minor. The key of E minor has 1 sharp, F sharp. So that means all of the Fs that are notated on the score will be F sharp unless indicated otherwise with a natural sign. And why are we not in G major, you may ask? Because that's also a key signature with 1 sharp. Well, often we can look at the very first and last harmony as a pretty clear indicator. And this first harmony here, E, G, and B, that is E minor, as is the very last harmony down the bottom there. That's also E minor. So a real nice indication that we are clearly in the key of E minor. So let's play through the first phrase. And as I'm playing it, and when I'm going to play the first phrase, I'm going to play the first 2 lines here. Have a listen and see if you can identify some key elements of the music. When I talk about elements, I mean melodic structures, harmony, certain chords that stand out, anything that just stands out to you, perhaps via repetition, as it's featured prominently. Just see what you can identify. For me, this is one of those wonderful pieces that gives you the DNA of the piece right from the very outset. And what I mean by that is within the first couple of measures here, we have the material that is used as building blocks for the rest of the piece. And we can extrapolate a lot of what comes next from this original material. So what do we have? Let's zoom on in. We have an anacrusis. An anacrusis, also known as an upbeat or a pickup note in other styles of music, starts with an incomplete measure. So we have just an eighth note there. It would be counted in 2/4, 1 and 2, and 1, 2, 1 and 2. 2. And the important thing about an anacrusis is it will often come back within the music. We see it here, we see it here, we see it here. Now that I've just marked that anacrusis at the beginning and highlighted some others, see if you can hear them as they re-enter into the music. 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. And 1. And by identifying the fact that it comes back, we're helped in some ways by the fact that in the notation we've separated the beams. That's part of the power of beaming, is the fact that this isn't connected to these other notes, right? We've separated them. And that helps visually understand that these notes are connected to the next measure rather than what came before. So that note is connected to the and 1, instead of connected to the previous one in that measure. And the feel, and 1, 2, 1, and 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, and 2, and 1. It always gives you this forward momentum, and 1, leading into the next measure. So that can really not only inform the way that you play, but it can really transform and tie together the phrasing, can suddenly make it make sense. And we'll look at the anacrusis as it comes through the rest of the piece, because it in fact continues on through the whole piece of music. What else is in the musical DNA here? Well, these block chords played PIMA are pretty outstanding to me. We suddenly, after this lovely single note anacrusis, PIMA played as a block chord, all at the same time. So we get this lovely chord, chord, chord. And that really punctuates the music. We can see it comes back in the second line. And then as we're looking forward throughout the music, which we'll do in a moment, we'll find more examples of these block chords coming into play. And so given that it's such an important part of the musical makeup, it's something to take into consideration about how we play it. So for example, if we play it with a rolled chord, we might want to think about doing that same kind of ornamentation, that kind of roll, in a similar way as the music progresses, to keep things cohesive, instead of doing it just randomly. So these block chords, I think, are quite important. And then in addition, one last really integral thing for me is this melodic line. We're getting very colorful here. G, F sharp, E. This is what's called stepwise motion, just like a scale. E is the root note of an E minor, the tonic, and we're going up. The second degree is F sharp, and the third degree is G. So we're just going 3, 2, 1 in the scale of E minor. So if you listen now, we've got the anacrusis, the block chords, and then this lovely little scale fragment. Anacrusis, 3, 2, 1. And that scale figure, that stepwise motion, permeates the whole piece. So already, and that's what I love about pieces like this, we see the DNA to make up the rest of the piece of music. If we look at the rest of this first phrase, well, we've got some nice, I'm not sure what colors to use here, we've got some nice bass notes here, just punctuating the rest of that chord that's split up there. And now let's look at we've got the anacrusis. Now look at this. We get this line, again preceded by the anacrusis. Not the same 3-note scale, but still stepwise movement. But happily, instead of block chords, we get colors, colors, colors. We get contrary motion, this bass line now. Well, I guess I could use this as this active bass line, going up this way. So instead of block chords going something like that, I don't know, I'm making it up. Don't mess with the composition. We get this descending stepwise line, the highlighted red line, and now contrary motion with a rising bass line. Also stepwise and somewhat chromatic, that A sharp. So we get that stepwise materials, that DNA coming back. Second line. We start off identical to the opening. However, we end differently. We have in the upper parts, D, D, D. Okay, that little scale going down there. And then our bass line, a little more active, but still in that contrary motion. Contrary meaning the upper line going down. There's a lovely little scale in G major now. And the bass line is upwards movement. So we've got one line going down and one line coming up. And that makes a beautiful sounding passage. Now that we've colored all of this in, arts and crafts, as I like to say, let's have a listen back to it. Yeah, lovely. So we now, I think, have a bit of an understanding about what's going on here. We've got this stepwise movement, we've got the anacrusis, the block chords, and then the contrary motion. One last thing that's a real beautiful moment to bring out, let me just clear out some of these colors, is we'll call it a suspension here. We start with the G over here, prepared as part of that harmony. Then we have the G suspended over what's going to be a B major or B7 chord, and then resolving down to the F sharp. Now I don't want to go into suspensions right here in terms of theory, but the point is, here's the real point, that G is a bit dissonant against the B below it. And when it comes down to the F sharp, it's going to be a bit more consonant, belonging with that B. So the way we can treat it, very simply put, is to play the G a little louder and the F sharp softer. It's very expressive. Let me back up just a little bit to the anacrusis. Very expressive moment, as opposed to playing the F sharp loudly, which can kind of evaporate that expressive opportunity. Your fingers kind of want to do that because there's nothing else to do on that beat except play that F sharp. And so you have to be aware of that sound, and suspensions and non-chordal tones are something that you start to get used to, the sound of. And the simple rule is play the resolution softly. That might also impact your right-hand fingering choice. Instead of using your thumb like I just did to exaggerate the F sharp there to make it sound a bit clashing, you definitely would not use the thumb. So the thumb for the bass and then maybe the I finger there. It's an example of where musical intention is going to inform your fingering choices. All right, let's move on now. And now that we've really looked at the, as I keep saying, the DNA of this composition, the material, let's see how that applies to the material moving forward. So let's continue on from the pickup to measure 9. Now, a little curiosity here is that we have 8 in brackets. That's because we start again with the anacrusis. I like to do this in our editions because the anacrusis really is tied to the material that's about to be played, as opposed to the previous line, right, back here. So you'll notice that this measure is actually incomplete. We've got 1 and 2, but no and of 2. That's because we put it down here. So we've moved the anacrusis so that we can tie it in visually with the next line. So let me play from the pickup to measure 9 and see once again, now that we've mapped out this musical material, if you can identify some of them again. Yeah, so that's the second main phrase. So once again, anacrusis, no doubt. Yum bum. And here it comes back quite quickly, each measure. Dee da dum. And here, dum dum, dum dum, dee da da. I mean, it's a repeated phrase, right? Interestingly, though, that we get this kind of constant tone, this B, almost like a pedal, throughout that whole middle voice. B, 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 B. Reminds me a little bit of Lagrima. I'll tell you why. And then the moving parts happen in the upper voice and the lower voice, the treble and the bass, and we're often moving in the interval of a tenth. So we've got F sharp, G, then A, G, F sharp. Are we noticing anything similar to the beginning? We've got the melodic line going, again, just very simple but elegant stepwise movement. 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. And then the bass comes along with it. Let's give it, well, D sharp, E, F, E, D sharp. Together. That interval is the interval of a tenth. Very sweet singing interval that I said it reminded me of Lagrima, and this is why. That's tenths in the key of E major, and this is tenths in the key of E minor. It's a bit like a E minor Lagrima. Anyway, I don't want to digress. But the final musical component, of course, if we're looking at our colors that are missing, block chords. Yeah? So not only are we getting the scalar motion, this little stepwise motion up and down in the melody and then accompanied with the bass, we're also getting our block chords, which were introduced at the beginning as well. So it's nice. This is always lovely with great compositions and composers, even on a miniature scale, to see musical material that is developed throughout the piece, albeit a very short one. Let's continue on. Well, actually, before just leaving, let's talk about shaping this passage. This is an easy one to shape, I think. As a very big generalization where there are many exceptions, one could say that when melodic material goes up, you can get louder, and when it comes down, you can get softer. And if that sounds too generic, you're probably right, but here, it works. So... this wave effect over each 4-measure phrase. I was going to say something. I've lost it just for a moment. Maybe it'll come back to me. In any case, shaping those 2 4-measure phrases with that lovely dynamic arc can really make it a very expressive passage. And then on the second grouping, I just changed the right-hand tone color to a bit more ponticello to give it a bit of variety the second time. All right, moving on now, we've got a different texture all of a sudden. So we've had the anacrusis, we've had the block chords, etc., etc. Now it really starts to get further away from what we originally started noting. Or has it? So let's look first of all for our anacrusis. Is it there? Yes, it is. And in fact, there is another one in the middle of this phrase, although musically, well, the way it's notated, maybe I should have split that beaming to make it more clear, but there's another one. But it's a little less obvious. Let me play through it now and start listening for those musical materials and also this anacrusis, starting from the pickup to 17. On. So now we get this cha, 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 and the melodic material in the upper line is all offset. But we still get that scalar pattern, that scalar movement. G, F sharp, E, D sharp. And also going up, yes, B, C, D sharp, E. Then there's a bit of a leap. So you can see that there's still that material, and we get a more active bass line now. I would almost say that the bass line perhaps takes the focus. It's got the more interesting line moving along. And we get the block chords, albeit not particularly dense like before. So there are some similarities, but we're starting to get further away from the original material, which makes the music interesting. So let me play the piece up to this point from the very beginning without the initial repeat. I know there's a lot going up on this score, but let's just see if we can tie a few things together and then we'll get to the final passage. 1, 2. Third phrase. Yeah, so it's really interesting, nice progression of musical interest. I remembered what I wanted to say from before. Let me just clear. It's getting a bit messy. Let's clear this up. Remember I talked about this phrase and having the dynamic follow the arc of the melody. When it goes up, it gets a bit louder. When it gets down, it gets softer. Something that is sometimes underutilized in music is the ability for the repeated voice, in this case it's a B, to facilitate the dynamic change. So we often think of melody changing when we think of the dynamic shaping, right? So we might think, okay, the melody is going to go, that's our shaping, louder up and softer down. However, whatever's repeated on the classical guitar is going to actually give you better, be a better resource for you to fluctuate the dynamics because there's more points of information. So often when we think about voices, we think melody loudest, bass second loudest, and middle voice soft. But we want to not just keep that middle voice soft, we want to arc the dynamic with the rest of the music. So it goes like this. Yeah, so that B goes whoa. And we get that musical shaping from the inner line as well. It helps everything swell and then everything come back down. That's what I was going to say before. One last thing about this offbeat section is I think it perhaps is the most ripe candidate, mixing my metaphors, for tempo fluctuation. We've got this lovely offset melodic material, but it's kind of an even rhythm. So I'm speeding up and slowing down. I'm also getting louder and softer, going in tandem. All right, let's look at the final material. Now this is, I think, quite interesting. we talked about offset material, right? We had the melody off in this variation almost, in that part, on the off beat. Now, if we look at this last passage, it's not really as evident where this scalar figure might be, where the melody might be. Let me play it for you. I'm going to start at the beginning of the second last line. That's measure 22 there. Where's the melody? Where are those musical DNA we talked about from the beginning? Well, perhaps most obviously, we do not have any block chords. But I would argue now we have arpeggiated chords. P-I-M-A, P-I-M-A. So there's our block chords. We do get a satisfying block chord E minor at the end. But that's what's happened to our 4-note block chords. They've been arpeggiated, which sounds rather lovely. What about the melody? Now this is a bit more hidden, but it is where we have to put our detective hat on as classical guitarists, but it's a very rewarding moment. So, stepwise motion. G, F sharp, E. I almost lost it for a second. G, F sharp, E. A little bit of a stretch, right? But can you hear it? I'm going to change my left-hand fingering just a bit. Dee da da, dee da da. Same, but very much obscured and hidden inside this arpeggiated texture. We in fact get kind of the resolution, so we get this melodic note here, D sharp, right? We've got G, F sharp, D sharp instead of the E. Kind of get it resolved there. This happens in the music of Bach quite often. Beginning of the second last line, 22. Okay, so it's hidden in that arpeggiated texture. And I think you can go it in two different ways. You could just play this rather straightforward and it will still work. It's enough in the music just to sort of get what we need in terms of the melody still being there, but albeit a bit intertwined with all these arpeggios. But if you want to make something like this really special, and this happens a lot in classical guitar, we can leave fingers down in the left hand so that certain notes sustain. Now that E is an open E, so it's going to sustain by itself. That G, however, is not going to sustain unless we leave our finger down. That third finger now is going to be really hard to hold down. We don't even have to hold them down for the full duration to the next melodic note. We just hold them down a bit longer than normal to create that illusion of a line. I think it's quite magical, those little details. The other thing that will help bring that out is just lightly accenting the finger in the right hand that's playing that particular note. A. Yeah. Lovely. Let's now hear the whole piece once again, without all of this clutter. Now that we've broken it down, let's see if we can hear it with a different pair of ears. Hope you enjoy this piece. You can download the music as part of the Easy Classical Guitar Collection, Volume 1. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.